Before we begin, since this is a BBC-owned property, I feel the need to point out that the news arm of the BBC has a continuing issue with transphobic leanings in its news coverage. You can find in a pinned comment below various videos from both myself and other YouTubers covering this issue. And while I understand that the Doctor Who creative team is not responsible for this, I will continue to point this out for as long as it remains a consistent issue. Thank you.
If you're wondering why I'm in my David Tennant cosplay when this video is not about that, it's because I was all set to shoot a video with my more detailed thoughts on the notion and my current feelings about bringing back a previous Doctor to play the part again, and then all this dropped, and I need to talk about this first, and I'm not getting changed. Don't worry, that video on the regeneration's still gonna happen just a little later now. Anyways, so there were a couple of things that got announced, and when the first one that, well, at least the first one that I heard about landed, I thought maybe I'll throw together a short about that. I'm not sure I have particularly detailed thoughts to cover, and then I found out about the second thing, and I'm like, all right. So there's kind of two things that are the headline things, but it's the inclusion of a third thing that's kind of how some of this was delivered and announced that actually made me want to talk about it. So what order do I do this in? Why don't we just start with the logo? We have an announcement of the new logo for Doctor Who, which is decidedly old school. It is very much in the vein of the style of logo that was done back during the Fourth Doctor's era, and possibly even, I think, it was debuted during the Third Doctor's era, if I'm remembering correctly. Now, it's not an exact replica of the old logo, but it's clearly inspired by it. And yeah, I like it. I haven't liked every Doctor Who logo. I think if I were to pick one that I didn't particularly like, it was that one that was being used for Matt Smith's era that kind of had the DW try and form the TARDIS. I didn't particularly care for that one. That was Moffat's. And looking back on the old logo now during RTD's initial run as showrunner for Doctor Who, it's okay, it's fine. But yeah, I like this. Now, part of this is I do like classic Doctor Who, so this is hitting that nostalgia for me. But even if it doesn't hit that for you, I think it's just a nice, tidy design. There's a reason that it worked back then, still works now. So I'm not going to do any kind of deep analysis on the logo. I actually did do that for the one that debuted for the Whittaker era. I went on for like 7 minutes about it. Actually, almost a little bit as a joke. I'm not doing that here. But logo was revealed. I dig it. Very cool. The somewhat bigger news is that the BBC is going to be partnering with Disney Plus, and Disney Plus is going to be carrying Doctor Who going forward outside of the UK. And so looking over the announcement, this is why I initially was going to do a short on this. There actually isn't that much to report. Previously, at least in the US, the Doctor Who brand and the backlog and the newer episodes, sometime after they aired, was being carried by HBO Max. Now it'll be on Disney Plus. And Disney Plus will be taking it over in other territories where it wasn't on HBO Max because HBO Max didn't have the penetration that Disney Plus did. That sounds dirty when I say it that way. Anyways, I'm rolling with it. So this doesn't strike me as that big a deal, but I think it's kind of worth addressing because I can see a ton of people like seeing the headline with the words Disney and Doctor Who in it and completely miss what actually happened or misinterpret it, because we've actually already seen this happen. I never did a video on it, but I had to clarify in multiple comment replies to people after Sony acquired, I think actually the studio outright, Bad Wolf Studio, that's currently handling the production of the new Doctor Who material, and a ton of people thought Sony bought the Doctor Who IP, bought the property itself. They didn't. They bought a controlling stake, if not bought outright, the studio that's doing it. But that has nothing to do with owning the IP and actually owning Doctor Who. And it's the same here. Disney does not own Doctor Who any more than Warner Brothers owned Doctor Who when it was being put out on the HBO Max platform. This is just about distribution rights. That having been said, there's still a couple of things worth talking about. The first is, I'm not surprised Doctor Who jumped ship off of HBO Max. That is quite literally a sinking ship. It has already been announced that it's going to be merged with Discovery Plus into a whole new thing that may or may not succeed on its own merits. And with David Zaslav at Warner Brothers Discovery making all these harsh cuts, there'd be no assurance that there would be any attempt to actually leverage or properly push for marketing on it. And that is going to bring us to the last thing that ties into all of this. That was the reason I ultimately did decide to do this video. So there was a video that was put out on both Instagram and YouTube featuring Ncuti Gatwa, actually in a very casual, almost offhanded way.
And to celebrate the news that will be landing on the BBC and Disney Plus, I'm here to answer some questions. Let's go.
But additionally, just answering some general questions about Doctor Who. And I do mean very general, like premise level questions about Doctor Who.
Doctor Who is a show about an alien Time Lord with two hearts who travels through time and space with a human companion by their side in the TARDIS.
And the fact that that was done and Disney's name was dropped in that piece of promotion, to me says that while I do not believe that Disney is seeking to actually own outright the Doctor Who IP, and I don't think the BBC would sell it to them anyways, depending on how BBC works, given that it's publicly funded, they may not actually even be allowed to. I don't know either way. I'm saying, like, maybe they can. I don't know. But I can't imagine they would actually want to sell it. But Disney does seem to actually want to be an active partner, just like not just what HBO Max did, which is, we're the platform where you watch this now. Hey, come on over. Because, like, they did make a deal. It's not like HBO Max did nothing with it. It was a little bit of a jewel in their crown in terms of, launch lineup and bringing people in for stuff other than rewatching Game of Thrones and watching that fall apart again. So HBO Max did have some appreciation of it, but after that initial announcement in Series 11, they basically just let it just sit there. And that was it. The fact that Disney is partnering to the point that Disney Plus was part of this initial push of marketing with Ncuti Gatwa front and center, that actually is pretty revealing about the degree to which Disney is hoping to become a part of the branding. So again, Disney does not own Doctor Who. I would be very shocked if they were ever able to actually acquire it. But that doesn't mean that they don't want a strong association with it because they feel it's a brand that suits their portfolio, or it taps into an audience that they want to have involved with them, that they want to bring on board to see what else is on Disney Plus. Because you know what? Theoretically, if you had Doctor Who fans who haven't really had a reason to get Disney Plus, maybe they don't have kids who need children's entertainment. Maybe they don't have a lot of nostalgia for old Disney stuff. Maybe they're not into the MCU. But you know what? If you can get people on board by presenting them with an initial property that they do love, and you can get some new people in, well, if you like Doctor Who, maybe you'll like some of the Star Wars stuff. There's a whole catalog worth of stuff for you to look at and maybe end up as a committed subscriber, even when there aren't new episodes airing. So this is fairly standard business stuff, but the degree to which Disney seems to be going out of their way to have their name very much attached to the upcoming material, that feels like, honestly, a stronger show of support and a stronger level of interest in the property than Warner Brothers Discovery, well, it was just Warner Brothers at the time, ever showed with the thing. But I also want to come back to Ncuti Gatwa's little video answering questions, because, as I said, these were base level, like talking about just the core premise. In other words, this wasn't a piece of marketing aimed at existing Doctor Who fans. This was a piece of marketing to pitch the idea of what Doctor Who is to a whole new audience. And I think it's very important that they're doing that with Gatwa and not with Tennant, because Tennant is the Doctor we're going to see most immediately. He's who we're going to see in the 3 specials we're getting next year. He's what a lot of the talk is going to be about, but it's not going to be him after that. And this kind of shows a commitment to not just assume that the Tennant run will definitely revive it and we'll be fine after that. No, this is showing preemptively an interest in selling the connection of Ncuti Gatwa in this part and also presenting it for a potential new audience, which is something that was done decently, I would say, before Series 11 premiered. Now, I would actually say that BBC kind of failed to market Doctor Who very well after Series 11. They did quite an admirable job building up to the start of Jodie Whittaker's era, but not really after that. And so if this can, first of all, pull off basically what Series 11 did, it can make for a very strong start. But then if they have learned their lesson, or if they are willing to let Disney pick up the slack, and Disney's willing to do so on some of the promotional side, which their name being mentioned in this video would indicate seems to be what they're leaning towards, then maybe they can continue that push so that it becomes sustained interest and not just an initial pop of interest at the start of the thing. Of course, there's also an argument to be made that a bunch of new people came in for Series 11 and just didn't stick around because they didn't like it. That's possible. Trying to parse the demographics on that are difficult, so I'm not going to bother. I do not want to get into a ratings argument again. I hate that nonsense. But overall, this entire approach shows an understanding that Doctor Who kind of needs to be sold again, and that David Tennant was very much the move to bring people back in who, for whatever reason, have fallen off the show. And not all of that was during Chibnall's run and Whittaker's era, to be clear. Moffat's era saw a massive drop-off. Series 10, which I love, but the ratings just weren't there. They weren't. So people were falling off the show already, and then the pop that initially happened with Series 11 didn't stick. So bringing back Tennant is an attempt to appeal to the old fans who might well have fallen off during Whittaker's era or may have fallen off during Moffat's era. And so that's their hook. That's to get them in to check out the specials. And I'll give sort of my thoughts on all of that when I get to the video I originally got this outfit out for, to talk about that regeneration. But they're also already now doing the work to introduce people who are new, because it's I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it would be very difficult to sell the appeal of Tennant to a new audience who doesn't already know Doctor Who, because I have no doubt this is going to heavily lean on existing knowledge and playing to the presumed knowledge and emotions and feelings and wants of the existing fan base. Well, whether current or have at some point been the fan base of modern era Doctor Who. That's who this is for. And so if you tried to pitch Tennant to the new people who aren't really into Doctor Who, he's only going to be around for 3 specials and then he's gone, and those specials are probably going to be pretty self-referential to the era prior to that, possibly even to Classic Who. That's not going to make for a great jumping on point. They may still be great, don't get me wrong. Jumping on point is not what every single thing should or has to be, but that does leave the jumping on point to make a lot more sense to push as a concept with Gatwa's era. And if the marketing is in line with the actual creative decisions being done by Russell T Davies and his team, then that really does feel like a very wise approach. There seems to be a lot of thought that is going into this, and some of it is reacting to the fact that the bump in viewers during Whittaker's era didn't sustain, that people were already dropping off during Moffat. This feels like a response to that, not necessarily in a fan pander way. We'll see if that ends up being the case. But these moves themselves don't have to be fan pandering in, a kind of like just cheap way, but they are trying to appeal to different kinds of fans with different aspects of this, and they are kind of pushing different things towards different people. Again, that's why the Gatwa video is answering core base level, like every Doctor Who fans already knows the answer to most of these questions.
The Doctor doesn't carry any weapons, just a sonic screwdriver for fixing things and getting out of tricky situations.
But that's because the video's not for them. It's to tell new people, people who have Disney Plus, people who may not be Anglophiles, people who may not have ever heard of Doctor Who, to go, hey, This is coming to a platform you already have. Here's maybe some reasons why you might want to watch it. Here's the idea. Doesn't this sound interesting? Isn't this person telling you he's going to be playing the lead kind of charismatic? Don't you want to see more? And that's the flip side of it. Because I mentioned how, from Disney's perspective, bringing in Doctor Who, could potentially bring in new people to the platform. But from the perspective of Doctor Who as a property, getting on Disney Plus is big. Because Disney, especially right now, is the focal point of the biggest pieces of American entertainment that there are. Star Wars, the MCU, the Disney brand itself, Pixar. It is at the heart of this, and it basically owns America's childhood. But Doctor Who isn't the childhood of most of America. While Doctor Who has continued to get a foothold and has a very strong following in this country, it's not as ubiquitous here as it is in the UK. But if you can bring it into a platform that has a very sizable audience that doesn't already know it or hasn't had reason to seek it out, and suddenly, oh, look, I've heard of Doctor Who. Oh, it's on this service I've got now. Now, how will this affect, quote unquote, the ratings? Who knows? Most streaming platforms don't release their numbers. So, any talk of ratings down the line is going to be about the actual ratings for the airing of the shows themselves on BBC channels in the UK. So again, that's part of why I don't like talking about them. In an age now where part of the value of a property and part of the measure of the appeal of a property is in streaming, which we only know what the streaming numbers are if the platforms tell us. There are some organizations out there that have their metrics and ways to kind of roughly calculate what it might be, but the hard data, they don't have to provide, and most of them don't most of the time. But overall, this feels like a very concerted effort and a very well thought out effort to try and give this new era of Doctor Who the best possible launch, not only for Tennant, who at this point basically has already sold his specials just with his appearance at the end of The Power of the Doctor, but also with an eye past that. It's showing long-term investment and long-term planning that, frankly, is comforting and rewarding. As someone who looks at particularly the Chibnall era and feels like it was kind of flying by the seat of its pants, and as much as Chibnall talked about having a plan and all of it, watching it collectively, it doesn't feel particularly well planned, both in terms of the final product itself, but definitely in terms of the promotion. But this feels like there's more planning, more dedication. And given how much I love Doctor Who, that's something I'm happy to see. So there we go. Doctor Who's coming to Disney Plus. Disney does not own it. Don't go there. New logo. Cool. I like it. A little bit of Ncuti Gatwa. Again, gives me no indication of how he's actually going to play the part. He's not in character for this video, but he is charming. I'm here for that. What do you think about any of the stuff I've just talked about? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon's what pays the bills around here, allows me to do this as my living and to, spend my day churning out videos I hadn't planned on in an outfit that I was wearing for a completely different video because I don't have to hold down a desk job somewhere. So any amount you can contribute is of immense help. And there are perks for doing that. But even if you can't, the likes, the shares, the subscribes, there's a whole bunch of new subscribers here, and I'm happy to have you. All of those help as well. But ultimately, what I really want you to remember, what I always want you to remember, is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. All right, time to thank my highest supporting patrons. Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Melinda Walters, Emu Delkey, Leotha Boyd, Toy Loli, Becky Sparks, Phrenobulax, The Poodle, Zach, Bookworm, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperol, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Shayla Gourlay, Brendan LaRose, and TT. Thank you for your support. If you want to hear me try and say your name while this little guy tries to chew on my earrings, well, you can check out the Patreon for the support tiers that get you a shout out. Thanks so much. You are a pain in my butt.